now. Man, we're looking
There
good.
we go. We are.
All right.
All right. Let's see here. Got a few minutes till we get started, but we will start in about 3 minutes. Let a few people pop in. Let's see. Let me pull it up on my phone here. Looks like we got a few people rolling here. Oh, there we go. All right, we'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Looks like we got a few people in the building. Excited to see you. If you can hear me, can you put maybe a thumbs up in the chat? If you can hear me, put a thumbs up in the chat for me so we know we are good to go here. What we got? Oh, there we go. Anybody's on yet? Just want to up. There we go.
There we go.
Hey, thank you. Looks like we are good to go. We are able to be heard. We'll give everybody just a couple more minutes to pop in. Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes to hop on and we'll get rolling here. Exciting conversation today. I just got a pretty good education in business credit from Dane, so I feel like I'm kind of up to speed. But like I said, it is about 12 o'clock right on the dot. We'll give everybody maybe about 2 or 3 more minutes to hop in, and we'll get started here in just a moment. But thank y'all for joining and being right on time. It's good lighting.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of nice. I just moved into this office a little bit ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was in that other one over there, and we expanded this whole side so it all the people that were in these offices got to move over there. And I said, dibs on.
Right. It's nice, right on the street.
Yeah.
Everything.
Dang, you see some wild stuff on the West End, though. Some crazy people coming through here.
If you have any friends who may want to join, may not know about it just yet, make sure you reach out to them, share it with them. We would love everybody to get on who wants information about business credit. We will save it to our corner to corner page, and we'll link to it so everybody will get an opportunity to take a peek at it. But we would love for anybody who wants to join the live to hop on right now. And as I just mentioned, we'll get started here. It's 12:02. We'll get started right about 12:05. I want to be respectful of everybody's time and get as many questions answered as possible. So, if you have any questions, As we go throughout, just let me know, and or put them in the chat, and I'll get them answered. Or Dane will get them answered. I won't get them answered. Dane will
We'll
get 'em
work
answered.
together. We'll get it taken care of.
There you go. I'm glad it stopped raining.
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. And then I thought it was gonna be kind of humid, but well, it's always humid.
I was about to say.
Hey, Miss Craig, how are you? Thanks for joining in. Thanks everybody for popping in. We'll get started here in two minutes. Just want to make sure I give everybody an opportunity who wants to join in the chance to get on over. It is right at the top of the hour, so we're making good time, and I think we'll have a tremendous conversation. So if for any reason you guys aren't able to hear us, just let me know. But I think our sound is good, and we're both in the picture, so we'll make this happen. Yes, sir. All right. It is about, right at 12:05, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank everybody for coming in. I'm sure we'll have some more individuals who will join us throughout the live chat. My name is Jaron Spicer. I have just, slowly transitioning into the Director of Alumni Programming role, and I am extremely excited to be with y'all today as we have a great topic of conversation to discuss. We are at Wilson Bank and Trust, and I have Dane with me today. I'll let him speak a little bit about himself and his role at Wilson Bank, and we'll get started on our topic, which is business credit. So as I mentioned, listen up, chime in if you have any questions, and I'll get to those questions as soon as I can. So Dane, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Wilson Bank and Trust.
Yeah, thank you, Jaron. So I manage our office here located on West End, right on the corner of 29th and West End. Been with the bank a little over 2 years, and really do just kind of a mixed bag of lending. We do consumer lending, commercial lending. We deal a lot with specifically real estate, but we have products and services that can kind of match, pretty much every business's needs. Very excited to be here today. I think this is very useful information, especially as you're starting a business or kind of trying to grow, from the roots up. I think this is great information to really help and use these tools to, help grow and expand your business.
Very cool. First let me say thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're, again, excited to be here and have this topic of discussion. We had a lot of our entrepreneurs ask about business credit.
Sure.
So we thought it was a great time to talk about it. So we'll dive right in. But I guess first, to kind of start the conversation, kind of give us some insight, high level, the difference between, I guess, business credit and personal credit.
Sure, and I think that's a great starting question. So, there's a lot of things between business credit and personal credit that are going to operate the same. But one of the main distinct differences is really personal credit all falls under your personal social security number. Anytime you're applying for a credit card, car loan, mortgage, all of that reports under your social security number. That's the number they're going to use to make sure that you are, responsible, paying your bills on time. With a business, you're generally going to file for what's called an EIN number. It's a tax ID number specifically for your business. Regardless of structure, it's important to have that EIN number. One, for tax purposes, but two, that's how you really differentiate your business from you personally. The only business structure that wouldn't require one is a sole proprietor. But at the same time, you're still able to get an EIN number as a sole proprietor, and we generally recommend it. So kind of on that same note, business credit, a lot of that's going to fall under your EIN number. So as you're applying for business credit products, they're using your social because they're going to look at your personal credit, but they're also going to use the EIN number to look at what credit products specifically fall under the business, the payments the business is making, how leveraged is the business, what type of credit have they taken on, and is it within their means. Personal credit, you've probably heard the three major credit reporting agencies. You've got TransUnion, you've got Equifax, and you got Experian. Business credit, they report to Experian, and they also report to Equifax. TransUnion does not do business credit.
Okay.
So that's good to know. There's also a third credit reporting agency that does not do personal. It only does business credit, and that is actually called the Dun and Bradstreet. It's oddly enough, we don't even look at that score when we're looking at business credit. Certain institutions will. A lot of it kind of depends on your specific industry, who you're doing business with, who you're applying for this credit product with. A lot of certain vendors will look at that number and as a gauge to your credit worthiness. So on the business side, you really got your Experian, your Equifax, and the DUNS number.
Okay, very cool. That's good to know. And as y'all can see, I'm learning as well and taking notes myself. So with that being said, as far as an entrepreneur is concerned, I guess what's the best way or certain ways, specific ways to establish business credit?
Yeah, so again, really step number one is getting that EIN number. Once your business is kind of off the ground, you're operating, you're starting to bring in a revenue, a cash flow, you've got that EIN established, that's your number that you're going to use to apply for business credit.
Okay.
Even, as you look to establish business credit, most creditors, financial institutions, they're going to look at your personal credit. So it's important to have good personal credit under your name as you're kind of looking to take on business credit. As when it starts, if you have no business credit, it's similar to as an individual, if you have no personal credit, it can be a challenge to get credit products. So step one is really getting that EIN number, and I'd say step 1A is also to have good personal credit. But when you're looking to start establishing business credit, you generally advise, start small, right? Start with a business credit card. Maybe if you're in an industry where you need a vehicle for your business, maybe take on a small business auto loan. These are great things that you'll likely be able to qualify for, but you're not going to overextend yourself. Really from there, it's about making your payments on time and using credit properly. So often we see people with high balances, specifically on credit cards. Business credit cards have those same interest rates that personal credit cards do. You're still looking at those high teens, low 20s, and that can be an expensive way to operate a business. Credit is to be used as a tool to improve like your cash flow, to help you expand. But at the end of the day, making payments on time, making sure you're not overutilizing, so you're not carrying high, large balances month over month. You're not applying for credit frequently at different spots because those inquiries will affect your credit as well. So it's all about starting slow, making sure you manage the credit that you're taking on properly, and continuing to grow as your business expands. And credit can be used again to expedite that expansion. But you don't want to grow too fast because we've all heard of the growing pains that some small businesses can take on.
Okay, so I guess it's fair to say that it sounds like business credit kind of correlates with the same expectations of personal credit.
Very much so. I think to put it in simple terms, I would treat business credit the same way I would treat personal credit. And we look at it basically the same way. I mean, we want to see consistent payment history. We don't want to see, high balances, over leverage. Don't take out more than you can afford to take on, right? And so all those same, rules that you've probably been told with your personal credit, all that applies to business credit. So if you feel comfortable in the credit that you've taken on as an individual, you're likely somebody that's ready to take on some business credit.
Okay, very good. And for those that have just joined, thank you for hopping on. I am at Wilson Bank and Trust speaking with Dane, and we're talking about business credit, which is a very important topic of discussion if you are a small business or a large business and you want to establish that type of credit profile. So Dane, where can we go to see our business credit rating or profile so that we can get what is a good credit score for business, and those things?
So it's actually, I'm glad you asked that, and it is more of a challenge to see your business credit as it is your personal credit. As an individual, you can actually pull your personal credit from all major credit reporting agencies once a year without any consequence. They're required to do so if you ask. Business credit is not regulated the same way. Okay. So business credit, and you'll find this a lot on the commercial side if you're approaching credit products. It's a different ball game as far as what's regulated and like kind of the consumer versus commercial protection and regulation, I guess. If you are looking and you want to see what that business credit looks like, I generally recommend starting with the credit reporting agencies. You can still, inquire as to what your credit score looks like. Again, you're going to need that EIN number, and that's generally how they're going to confirm that, again, you are the owner of the business, and they'll be able to kind of communicate with you what's on there. If there's anything maybe fraudulent or something you want to dispute, that's really a great starting point. And as you apply for business credit through, financial institutions, vendors, whoever, as they pull it, they can generally share with you, what they're seeing. But it's not as regulated. And just to give you an example, on the personal side, if you ever decline for an application or some reason, we're required to send you a decline letter explicitly stating why it was declined. Commercial side does not have that regulation, so that's another thing too. So it can be a little bit more of a challenge, but it's not impossible. It's really about starting with the credit reporting agencies.
So basically, go to TransUnion, Equifax, and Dun & Bradstreet.
So Experian, Equifax, and Dun & Bradstreet.
Okay, got it. Okay, very good. So if it's not as regulated, I don't want that to get confused with that. It's not important. How important is it for an entrepreneur to establish good business credit, or do we not need business credit?
So you do need business credit. I would say, personal credit is going to be as important, if not more important, because one, that starts you off on the right foot, and two, as you apply for business credit, they're very likely going to look at your personal credit as well. If your business is doing great and it's paying all its bills, but you as an individual aren't paying your bills and are struggling, that's going to impact their decision. Okay. So business credit is very important, and when I say it's not quite as regulated, that doesn't mean it isn't regulated at all. A lot of those same, the payment history, the same formula that goes into producing a credit score is used on the business side. They're just not required to share as much information as you are as a consumer. Okay. But business credit is still very important, especially in the early growth stages of a business as you're looking to expand or to take on, a new relationship with a vendor, or if you have to buy new equipment and you want to finance that equipment. It's very important to have solid business credit. Okay,
very good. And again, for those who just popped in, if you have any questions, definitely put them in the chat. And again, I won't be answering it, but we'll get them over to Dane and let him answer those questions for us. A question that I had is, because I didn't know much about business credit, I guess what are some of the common misconceptions or things that we hear as business owners that we don't know about business credit?
Well, what I would tell you too, or to kind of answer that question, is it's important how you are listed on the credit product. So if you are applying for a credit product and your business is the primary borrower, yet you are a secondary borrower, that credit product will show up under your personal credit. Now, if you were listed as a guarantor or a signer, it does not list it as your personal credit. So it's important to understand and have that conversation with whoever you're working with as you're approaching financing to make sure that that is explicitly clear. You don't want this to show up under your personal credit because, again, your business is the one handling it. So I would say that's a first common misconception. Another common misconception is that, specifically on the business side, is that credit score really dictates things. Credit score is a great barometer to show your payment history, that you've had, different types of credit, and you can juggle that. But a lot of times, a strong credit score just means you've taken on a lot of credit. You've been able to juggle it. You've been able to make your payments. But on the business side, we don't put as much stake into the score as much as we're looking at the total picture, right? So we want to see, one, the credit score is important, don't get me wrong, but we want to make sure, one, that the cash flow of the business can support, this new product. If it's secured by some level of collateral, we want to make sure the value of the collateral is strong in comparison to the loan you're taking out against it. We like to verify you have, cash. Cash is always going to be king, so it's important to have cash on hand. If you're strapped for cash, it can create a challenge to apply for business credit. So I would say biggest misconception of what we see is a lot of people think, well, I have an 800 credit score, but they don't have those other things, that means they're going to be qualified. On the personal side, if you have an 800 credit score and you go apply for a credit card, you're probably going to get that credit card.
Got it.
And so that would be another misconception. I think, on the business side, we're looking at a lot more. And we really drill down in some details where as a consumer, it can be a pretty quick application to get, some type of credit product.
Okay. Is there, and I know you said it's kind of maybe institution based, as far as what banking institution you bank with or go to maybe get a line of credit or a loan. Is there a point where, I guess, institutions stop even looking at my personal credit and it's all based off business credit, or is it always kind of tied hand in hand?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of that's really going to be dictated by the institution you're using. In my personal experience, I worked with U.S. Bank for a few years, and they had products where they weren't really looking at personal credit. They were looking at the business credit. If you didn't have any, they had products to help you get that established. Now, speaking for Wilson Bank and Trust, we look at the individual's credit. We want to see that the person we're doing business with, not just the business, but, the individual, the owner, that they're credit worthy as well. So I would say a lot of that's going to be dictated by how the bank likes to, process their applications. I would say the bigger the bank, a lot of times they can be a little bit more aggressive on the commercial side, and maybe they won't look at the individual as much. And then really the bigger the business is and how the business is structured. So you've got and this may not apply to a lot of the people in this, but public companies that are owned, as a shareholder.
Starbucks.
Yeah, like a Starbucks, they're probably not looking at the CEO of Starbucks credit.
Right.
Because that business is owned by hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Yeah.
Right, but as a single member LLC, to an extent, I am the business, right? I've started it. This is my brand, and as much as this business is its own entity, without me, this business probably won't survive. So that's when they're going to look at your personal credit.
Okay. In the comments, Ms. Jones, she stated that her personal credit is the reason why she doesn't apply for business credit. So I guess is that the first place I guess a small business owner should start before they even jump to thinking about business credit? Is it my personal credit?
Personal credit is always going to be a factor as you're starting out on the business side. I would tell you is if you feel good about your personal credit and you feel like you have a strong score, you've shown consistent payment history, you're not maxing out credit cards, you're not buying a car that's well without your means. I think you clearly understand how credit works. And business credit, although there's a little bit of mystery behind it because it's just not as talked about, it operates very much the same as personal credit. It's all about making sure that when you do apply for a business credit product that is this going to reflect under my personal score or not? And that's where you need a quality lender that's going to be able to walk you through that process, because as I'm sure she has found, you may take on a business auto loan, business credit card, a business mortgage to buy like a commercial property. Well, if it's under your personal name too, that can really affect you from purchasing a house in your name or a car for you personally. So it's all about being careful on how that application is structured and if it's going to show up under your personal or just the business.
Okay. So I guess with that being said, it seems like it's an institution thing, or maybe just a personal thing. But is there a certain, when it comes to your business credit, should you be focused more so on? Well, no. Let me ask this: what type of institutions do maybe take on more business credit opportunities without focusing on personal credit? Is it the large institutions or your credit unions?
So credit unions are going to do very little, if any at all, business type lending.
Right.
Credit unions really are for the individual. Like that was how they began, was because you look at like maybe Teachers Credit Union or even Navy Federal Credit Union. When it started, it was supposed to be a resource to people that qualified or were members of those specific institutions. Now they have grown and they're starting to get into commercial side, but I would tell you, if you're looking for business credit, a credit union's probably not going to be the best bet for you. Bigger institutions have really built themselves on commercial lending. That's why you see a lot of the big banks on the big buildings downtown. But all that to be said, to answer your question, I think if you're looking, there are hundreds of banks and they all try to kind of specialize in something, maybe their particular niche. You've got specifically commercial banks that might be able to work with you if you're looking for some kind of a unique credit product or something that you really don't want to fall into your personal credit. Here at Wilson Bank, we do a large amount of commercial lending, but we do require personal guarantees. We want our borrowers to be personally committed to the project and know that they're as invested in this as we are. So that's just a strategy of ours, but it's not across the board. Not all banks require that. So I think it's just in your early discussions as you're seeking out maybe the best rate or the type of credit you're looking for. It's about having that conversation with the other person on the end of the phone, or if you're in person, making sure that your lender understands, one, your needs, but two, how is this going to affect me personally? Does this fall under the business, or does this kind of include me as well in my individual credit? It's all just about having that conversation on the front end.
How important is your banking relationship when it comes to maybe getting some line of business credit? How important is that relationship?
It's very important. I would say really too, the smaller the institution, the more important it is. If you have a healthy, consistent deposit relationship, your business account has been held at this institution, they're seeing your cash flow, what's coming in, what's coming out, it's going to be an easier application process for you. Now, you start dealing with these bigger institutions, like I'll use Bank of America for instance. They're very much like either you fit in this box or you don't fit in this box. And we look at your relationship, but to an extent, if you don't meet our qualifications, sorry.
Gotcha.
Whereas there's more flexibility with a community-based organization or maybe a smaller local bank. Again, credit unions, they just don't really deal in the commercial side of things. But smaller community style or even more regional, like Regions is a good example, that would probably give you more of a benefit of the doubt if you have your relationship with them.
Okay. And in our community and those that we serve, sometimes we run into, I guess, a lack of knowledge or not knowing, having the wherewithal to understand how do we get access to certain resources.
Sure. So
that we can elevate ourselves. What are, I guess, some of the best ways or resources to start to inform yourself about business credit?
That's a good question. I think, it's all about building relationships. As you continue to grow in a business, it's important to know your banker, right? I know the unfortunate thing is we do see a lot of turnover in the banking industry, specifically the bigger banks. You can walk in one day and see one whole crew, and then they walk in the next week and it's a new crew. But I think as your business grows, you do want to establish a relationship with the person that you're going to be consistently doing business with. And also too, just look it up. I mean, Google is an excellent resource. A lot of the, like even in my role, sometimes I'll see, situations or applications and it's a little unique. It's outside of something that I've done in the past. And it's really just about kind of, diving in and trying to research just, like I'll just Google like, how do these type of loans, impact your credit? You can access like Experian, Equifax, TransUnion's, their websites have, information to show you how their scores are calculated. And it's not a perfect science, but it's at least a good tool for you to kind of educate yourself and understand what it is that you're taking on and how that will impact you down the road.
Okay, very good. We had a question in the comments, a great question from Ms. Craig. She asks, are vendor accounts helpful? So I guess if you having a few vendors and you can show proof of consistent payment with them, does it help in getting maybe a business loan from your bank?
It does, and I'm glad you asked that, Ms. Craig. Now, we're not a vendor, so I don't deal specifically on that side, but actually we were talking earlier, and I'll use this as an example, whereas like maybe a trucking company will have a relationship with a Pilot Flying J or BP, Shell, whoever, whereas they're maybe purchasing fuel on a credit line, and then as they get paid for their services, they pay that credit line back. Those things are they do show up under your business credit, and oftentimes the better your business credit is, the more affordable they will make that product to you, because they can see that you're very likely to pay that back promptly and according to their terms. So a lot of times that's kind of where we talked a little bit about that DUNS number. That number can come into play, I would say, more frequently when you're dealing with vendors. They have kind of their own metrics to really monitor your ability to manage the credit that they're extending to you. And oftentimes, let's say if it goes south and you're having trouble, they will, they'll either lower the amount of credit available to you, or they'll charge you a premium for the service that they're providing, the product that they're providing to you. So it's important to have that solid business credit, because it makes things more affordable for you down the road.
Okay. So I guess to kind of piggyback off her question, the vendor accounts, again, they help maybe in certain instances, but not in every instance.
Not necessarily in every instance, but I would say too, a lot of those vendors can, like if you're ever applying and for whatever reason that vendor's credit line doesn't show up, that history is not being reported, they should be able to provide you at least like a statement showing, hey, month over month this person has been consistent in their payment history, they're making their payments on time according to our agreement.
And that's something tangible that you can take to your bank.
That
right?
is, yeah. And as a bank, I would tell you, we love to see stuff like that. The more information that we can collect and the better we can understand your business and your payment history and your ability to manage these credit products, it's going to make our job that much easier. It's going to make lending that much easier for you.
Very cool. So again, we're talking about business credit today. If you do have any questions, pop them in the chat here. We got a couple more minutes that we'll be on, and a few more questions that I'll present to Dane. But if you have any questions, definitely pop them in the chat. So with business credit, as soon as we get our EIN, do we start establishing it? Are things starting to go on our business credit profile at that point? Or is it not until we, I guess, specifically go to a bank and say, I want a business line of credit, that things start getting funneling?
Yeah, so nothing will show up until you start applying. So you can get an EIN almost instantly through the IRS website. Once you have that EIN, the EIN starts really as a tax reporting purpose. So as you are, your business is operating, you're earning revenue. Unfortunately, we all got to pay Uncle Sam, right?
Right.
And so that EIN kind of starts there until you actually apply or take on business credit, nothing is going to show up under your EIN. So it kind of starts at your own speed, right? You can get the EIN today, never apply for anything, and then in 2 or 3 years, as the business continues to flourish, that's when you can look at applying, and you're still starting at basically a clean slate under that EIN number.
Very cool. Thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
So got a couple questions coming through in the chat. Jasmine asks, is there a minimum personal credit score we should have before applying for business credit? Very good question. Very good question.
That's a great question. And I would tell you that's going to vary institution to institution. Some banks are going to be more aggressive, some are more conservative, and it also will depend on the product. Unsecured credit that has no collateral associated with it, is generally the most I say it's the most difficult to get, but then we see how credit cards get passed out pretty easily, right? But if you're looking for like an unsecured line of credit, that can be a challenge at times, because one, as a bank, if you stop paying on this, we have nothing to collect on. And so that may have a higher credit score requirement than something that is backed by a collateral. And so I can't necessarily give you one specific score that would suffice across the board. I would tell you generally, if you're above 700, you're going to have a pretty smooth process qualifying. If you're kind of in the 640 to 700 range, depending on the product, you may or may not qualify. I would tell you below 640 is when it can start to become a challenge.
Okay. And I don't know, the two questions here.
Yeah.
And thank y'all for popping questions in the chat. I appreciate it. Well, I'll go with this one first from Janetta. Is an EIN all you need to start applying for business credit? Oh, well, actually, me and Dane were talking before we even started, and he was telling me a few things that Wilson Bank and Trust requires for business credit based off of the entity sole proprietor LLC. So I guess you can allude to that.
Yeah, so it's going to depend on your business structure. I think when we talk about business deposit accounts and what we require. We basically need to see who the ownership of the account or of the business is, how this business is structured, are you filed appropriately with the state, all that good stuff, right? Once you have an EIN number, you are eligible to apply for business credit. However, they're still going to look at, what type of income has the business earned, how long have you been in business, are you making money, are you losing money, kind of a cash flow scenario. So yes, an EIN does make you eligible to apply. However, it doesn't necessarily make you eligible to, to take on that credit. They're still, looking at those other factors.
Okay. So again, it sounds like it correlates to personal and business. I guess your business is an actual person, and the institution will look at debt to income, maybe.
Yes. And I think you kind of hit it. So the IRS looks as a business EIN as an entity, and if you have a social, you to the IRS are an entity, right? So it's kind of that's what that number identifies. And so similar to personal credit, where they want to see work history, they want to make sure that you've been employed for 2 years. Do you have consistent income? Can you show that income? What type of often collateral, what type of cash do you have on hand? All those things, as important as they are in personal credit, are going to be equally as important in the business credit side of things.
Very good. All right, so we got questions flowing in at this point.
All right, keep them coming.
So I don't know much about the Dun & Bradstreet, but is paying for Duns & Bradstreet worth it for business credit?
I will tell you, can you
tell me? Because I didn't know you had to pay for it.
So, a Dun & Bradstreet, they actually provide you like their own 9-digit identifier code that's unique to that specific business. Do I think it's worth it? I'll be honest with you, in my 9 years of banking experience, I have never looked at a Dun & Bradstreet score.
Okay.
So I think a lot of that depends on the industry you're in, and it depends on the financial institution, what type of credit you're looking at. Is it with a vendor? Are you looking to take on like a line of credit with a bank? I personally have never looked at one. I've never taken it into account as far as my application process. Now, I have dealt more specifically on the real estate side of things with like commercial property and personal lending. So I don't want to tell you it's not worth it. I will tell you in my experience, I don't deal with it almost ever.
So at Wilson Bank and Trust, it may not be a factor, but at Joe Johnson Bank, it may be a huge factor.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So
and I think if you ask that on the front end, like kind of how are you coming to this credit decision? Are you looking at this? And if they say yes, then it may be worth it. If they say no, then I wouldn't waste my time, paying for a service that's not necessary for me to move forward.
Okay, good. Shakar asked another great question, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. If I'm not, I apologize. What if you don't need an EIN, like for a sole proprietorship?
Great question. So as a sole proprietorship, you are not required to have an EIN. You can still apply for business credit products. However, they will show up under your personal credit because everything is being linked to your personal social security number. So if I'm a sole proprietor and I want to take on a business credit card or even finance the purchase of a commercial building or do something like that, well, that will show up under my personal credit report.
Okay, very good. So that kind of, well, I guess for me personally, that kind of not defeats the purpose of business credit because I don't want it to show up under my personal self. It's a separate entity.
Right. And I would tell you, sole proprietor is a great way to get started, and it kind of depends on your type of business. But if your business is continuing to grow and you're taking on employees and you have assets under the business, I would tell you it's important to go ahead and restructure that, whether it's into an LLC or a corporation, because that distinction between an LLC and a sole proprietorship keeps you as the individual more protected should something happen to the business. As a sole proprietor, you're basically liable for everything, yeah. Right? Whereas an LLC, there is a little bit more protection, not a ton. As a corporation, you get some more protection, but then it does change your tax status and how things are. But as a sole proprietor, like if I was just, let's say I'll use this for like a teacher, right? I could be my own teacher or consultant and go in, you pay me for my service. I'm earning that money. But I don't necessarily have employees. I don't really have assets. The asset is myself, right? Because I'm selling my knowledge, my consultation services. That's where it may make sense to have a sole proprietor, because ultimately, if something were to go wrong, I don't have anything to distinct the business versus myself. I am the product. But if I, own a restaurant or something like that, that would be important, because if somebody like slips and falls in the restaurant or if they get sued, I have a certain level of protection as an individual that's separated from the business.
And as we all know, we went through the academy, and we talked about sole proprietor, LLC, S corp, corporation. If you need to go back and kind of think about where your business should be placed as far as entities are concerned, please go back and do that, because we want you protected. Just want to make sure we don't have any more questions in here. But I do want Dane to speak about, because we'll start wrapping up here in just a moment. What time we got? Yeah, we got a few more minutes. So if you do have a last minute questions, pop it in the chat. But if you can, you might have already spoke about it, but again, if you can tell us what you guys look for when it comes to business credit.
So when it comes to business credit specifically for Wilson Bank, we're looking at kind of a total picture. So credit is definitely an important factor, but it's not the drive all. We want to see, one, we love collateral-based lending. Specifically, I know I've said we deal in real estate. So we generally will finance a certain percentage of the overall value of what that real estate is. So collateral is a big one. Cash on hand, what kind of liquidity does your business have, is always going to be an important factor. Credit, character. And if anyone's curious, it's worth looking up the 5 C's of credit, because that's an important thing to look at. They give you just kind of a good overview of kind of how credit is perceived. Character is important.
Can you just quickly break down character piece?
So character is like One, do you pay on time? Your ability to pay. Are you, do you? I don't want to use reputation because I don't think reputation is a factor. But a lot of it is like, are you 90 days late and then paying one lump sum to bring yourself current? And is that a frequent thing? Is your payment history inconsistent? So
Well,
probably,
I guess it's reputation with the people who you took money from.
Yeah.
Because y'all is it maybe call them to get a reference or
and that some banks will do references. We do on certain type products.
Okay.
So that can be a factor. I would say it's small, but it is something we do.
Okay.
I'm probably not doing a great job of explaining it, but a lot of that character factor does build into consistent payment history and just showing, your reliability. We know that you're good for it. We know you're going to pay it on time. We're not going to have to hunt you down to collect. Unfortunately, that does happen, and so I think that is a reflection of that kind of broad character explanation.
Okay. So I guess in layman's terms, a person, this is just hypothetically speaking, with an EIN, maybe a 700 credit score, good character. At that point, they're not saying they'll be awarded the loan, but they have they put themselves in a good position to receive a loan.
That's correct. And that's ultimately what I would say all banks are looking at is, we want to see that you're not over leveraging yourself. You have a clear understanding of what you're taking on. You have the ability to repay it. There is generally, not always, but we like to see collateral backing the loan. And your ability to just consistently make those payments, and you're not overextending yourself. All of those are good rules of thumb as you're approaching business credit.
Okay. All right, we are about to slowly wrap up, and we got a couple more questions. And any last minute, go ahead and pop them in, and we'll get them answered because we are about to wrap it up. We want to make sure that we respect Dane's time. Miss Craig has some great questions. She has another one. Does Wilson Bank and Trust offer, she says, transactional lending, or transactional funding, I guess?
So I may not fully understand what you mean by transactional lending. In banking terms, every time we extend credit.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
Let me just chime in. Miss Craig, if you can maybe simplify that question for us or ask it in a different way, we'll try to make sure that we answer it properly. But go ahead, Dane.
Well, I would say, when we extend credit to a business or even an individual, we consider that a transaction. Now, I think maybe how I'm perceiving that question is, with a line of credit, we can extend lines of credit to improve cash flow situations. So as some businesses are paid, 45 to 90 days after the service that they provide is complete. So what we can do is extend a line of credit to kind of meet the expenses in that time until they get paid. And then once they get paid, they pay us back. So what that does is it alleviates a cash flow issue. Because we know that, you're providing a quality service and you're going to be paid, like your business is in good standing. But it's expensive to, put your services into, to offer a service to completion with a person or vendor. And then knowing you're not going to be paid for that for 45 to 90 days, well, there's a lot of expenses leading up and a lot of expenses afterwards. So you may need money in the time to kind of carry on your business process, knowing that payment's coming. So that's a pretty common reason to take on a business line of credit, is just ultimately improving that cash flow.
Okay. Yeah. She said, you got it. Answered it perfectly. Okay. Perfect. Good. And she was talking about in regards to purchasing of real estate, so maybe for a commercial property or whatnot. And Ms. Jones, Shakari asked, you may have alluded to this, but again, a great question.
Sure.
What if you never borrow money? So what happens at that point?
Honestly, if you can operate a business without ever borrowing money, there is nothing wrong with that. I would tell you.
I think she's asking, like, if you've never borrowed it, because this is kind of, I equate this to this. You go to a job and you have a degree but no experience. They say, well, you don't have any experience. Of course, I don't have the experience. So what if you never borrowed money and able to build your credit? How do you go from there?
So that can be a challenge. I would tell you it's about starting small. So if you are in a position where you've never had to borrow money and your business now is kind of in a position where you're going to need it, banks will lend it to you, but they're not going to just, give you the house, right? They're going to start you small just to make sure that you can take that on. And generally, they're going to want to see about a 6 to 12 month payment history on that product before they will either increase that line or extend you more credit. The unfortunate thing with credit is it's a slow process. And another unfortunate thing is too, one simple mistake can set you back. If you miss one payment, that can stay on your credit for some time. And so it's about just making those payments on time and continuing to be consistent. That way banks know that you're reliable and that they can trust you to repay the money that they extend to you.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that sounds kind of like a good way to start is, well, of course, if they'll give it to you in a small loan without having any secure processes, that'd be great. But I guess you'd always ask, hey, can I do a secured loan for my business credit? Is that something that...
And so what a lot of banks will do is what's called like a UCC, where they can do a blanket lien against the business assets. So if, for example, if you did own, let's just say like a restaurant or something like that, the bank's not necessarily going to go in there and put a value to all the tables and chairs and, the materials in the kitchen and all that stuff, but we're just going to say, okay, here's $10,000. We're going to place a lien against all your equipment. So therefore, if you don't pay us back, we can come in and liquidate this and try to recoup our losses. Another thing you'll too, like we kind of talked about, that getting paid well after your, the service that you offer has already been completed. Some banks will offer what's called like receivable lending, where they will essentially look at your accounts receivable, so money that you're owed that you expect to be coming in. Well, the bank will say, okay, we feel confident that you have this money coming in this period of time, so we'll essentially place a lien against your receivables, and so we know that should you not pay us back, we actually have a claim to that money that you have coming in. So there's a lot of creative ways that banks will go about to make sure that they are recouped what they extend, and banks are always going to like having some level of collateral as opposed to no collateral.
Got it. So banks will make sure that they recoup, but they make sure they allow you to get your foot in the door.
Exactly.
By securing themselves.
And that's the thing too. It's a tool, because if you feel confident in your business and you say that I have had these receivables, I get paid on time all the time, but I know that this money is coming. This line of credit will help me alleviate a situation, and then once I get paid here, I'm good. And you feel confident in that, that's a great tool for you to use that's going to help with your cash flow situation. So it's a win-win for both sides. It gives the banks confidence knowing that should all else fail, we're probably still going to be okay, but it's great for you because I have confidence in my business. Now I have an extra line of capital that I can continue to operate, I can continue to grow without any major hiccups as things progress.
Very cool. I think we got time for one more question. Hey, if this has been beneficial and has helped you and you've learned something from it, put a thumbs up in the chat for me. I mean, I will put a thumbs up, but I'm asking questions right now. But this has been amazing. So if you can, give it a thumbs up because this has been great. We had one more. Okay, we got two more questions, and that's probably about all we're gonna have time for. How much money should your business generate to apply for a loan, or how much cash flow should you have?
So a lot of that's going to depend on the size of the loan that you're looking to take on. And again, it varies institution to institution. Similar to like a debt to income ratio. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you may have heard of that as you apply for like a mortgage or a credit card. They're basically looking at, how much money are you making and what percentage of that money is going to service credit obligations. Some banks look at that on the commercial side a little differently. Here at Wilson Bank, we look at what's called like a global cash flow. So basically we want to see all revenue sources that the business has, kind of look at that annual figure, and then we annualize your monthly payments to give us like kind of an annual figure of credit obligation payments you're paying on an annual basis. And we kind of have like a ratio we look at that makes us feel comfortable if the cash coming in is high enough to support more outflow of credit obligations.
That's good. All right, one last question, and so with this question, I'm gonna allow Dane to obviously answer the question, but also I guess give information on how they can connect with, or how we can connect with Wilson Bank and Trust. Obviously, I have their information, but you'll hear it directly from him. So we'll end that with this question. What documentation should you bring in when applying for a business loan?
That's actually a great question. I would tell you, if you're applying for a business credit loan, it's going to be very similar to personal. We're going to want to see 2 years tax returns for you. Depending on your filing with the business, more often than not, your business will show up under your personal tax returns. So we want 2 years of tax returns, most recent bank statements showing liquidity.
Is it 2 years of personal tax returns?
2 years of personal tax returns and 2 years of business tax returns.
Okay.
But I would say a lot of the time, your business will show up. Like if you have an LLC, sole proprietorship, those show up under your personal tax returns on I think it's the Schedule C. Don't quote me on that because I'm not an accountant. But if you have like a corporation, or you may have K-1s, which are more relevant to like business tax returns. So we want to see personal and business. We want to see cash on hand. So bank statements is great. We specifically at Wilson Bank, we like to look at what we call a personal financial statement. So it's you as an individual. What assets do you have? Do you own your house? How much do you owe against that house? Do you own your vehicles? What other credit obligations do you have? Are you guaranteeing any loans that we may not see on your credit report? Different things like that. So we want a personal financial statement, tax returns, bank statements. As a self-employed person, you generally don't have a W-2 or a pay stub, so we don't require those. But I would say those are pretty much the standard what you'll need to apply. Depending on your circumstance or the bank, they may require more information, but that's generally a good starting point.
Great. That question came from Monica. Thank you for that question. To kind of piggyback again off of what Dane just said, don't be intimidated by getting business credit. Come in, speak with Dane and his staff about business credit, and they may be able to help you. It might not be the perfect solution starting off, but at least it's something that you can establish a relationship and begin that process with them. So where can we go to, I guess, get more information about Wilson Bank and Trust? Obviously, they're right in the neighborhood, but
yeah. So we're right down the road. We're right here on West End. I'll post my contact information if that's okay, and you feel free to email me, call me, any way you want to communicate. I'm happy to walk you through, even if it's just for advice or to help understand something that maybe you're unsure of. Any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate. I'm happy to answer those however I can. Our team here, we have the deposit side. We have one deposit account specialist that operates out of our office. Her name's Elizabeth. We have 3 commercial lenders. I do commercial and consumer lending. So if there is a solution to whatever the need is, we generally have it, or we know where to point you in the right direction. So the best follow-up, I'm telling you, any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. Let me know. Anything I can do to help, happy to do it.
So what I'll do is I'll compile all of Dane's information, which I have, and I'll get it sent out. If I can put it in the description of this live, I'll definitely do that. But if not, I'll make sure that everyone has his information. Just want to make sure I didn't miss.
See a lot of thumbs up, so I'm happy that this was worthwhile for everybody. This has been great, and I really do appreciate you inviting me on here.
Oh man, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for your time. This has been a productive. I think it's been about almost exactly 1 hour. Productive 1 hour. Thank y'all. We have another Lunch and Learn coming up next month. Of course, we'll get you that information, and I know it'll be just as productive and educational as this one was. So thank y'all, and we will see you on the next Lunch and Learn. Take it easy.